Welcome, everybody, to another PD session offered by the IBC of ISTE. And I'm thrilled to have Jan Zanetis and Sue Porter and Audra with us today to talk about, I tell you, my favorite collaborative project of all times. I think it's one of the best ones that are out there. So I'm really excited that we're able to keep this alive and going. And so Read Around the Planet is coming around the corner, and this is a great project for especially even your entry level IVCers to be able to come and join and be a part of the collaborative world. So we're very excited that we have this presentation getting started, and I'm going to turn it over to Jan. And I want to thank everybody ahead of time for that. Please make sure you keep your microphones on mute unless you have a question. We also have the chat available as well if you wanted to just get a question out there for us to get attention to a question that you may have as we go through the session. So with that, I'm just going to turn this over to Jan. Thanks, Jan.
Okay, Paul, bring up the slides and go to slide 2, please. So my name is Jan, and I am with the Center for Interactive Learning and Collaboration. And the other presenter from CILC is Miss Sue. Say hi, Sue. And our third presenter is Miss Audra Brownlee, who is from Kansas and is a director of distance learning for her service center. So today we're going to have a bit of an overview and learn what is Read Around the Planet. I'm going to walk you through how to get registered. We're going to hear from Audra about projects that have occurred in the past. Then I'll say a few words about the video side of things, and we'll end up with some questions and answers. And just to keep things cool, if you have a question between now and the Q&A, go ahead and put it in that little chat box. Down at the bottom of your screen is a chat button, and you click on that, and then up will pop the chat window, and you can put your question or comment in there as we go along. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sue, and she's going to tell us the background of Read Around the Planet. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. Sue?
There we go. Thank you, Jan. Yes, Read Around the Planet, or as we more affectionately call it, RAP, is a celebration of reading. It was started, and it's in conjunction with NEA's Read Across America. It was started in 2002. This is our 19th year of Read Around the Planet. Unbelievable. And I think we might even have a few people who have been here every single year who have participated in some way. So anyway, as I say, it's a celebration of reading, and we learned from our friends in the UK that March is also book month or reading month there, so they also like to participate many times and will join us. So if you could do the next slide, Paul, please. So a few facts, as I said, it began in 2002, and it was Read Across America at that point. But in 2006, our friends in Canada and the UK said, hey, we like to celebrate reading too. Can we join you? And it was in 2006 that we changed the name to Read Around the Planet so we could include anybody who wanted to participate. In the 19 years, we've had over 19,000 classes registered. And then if you kind of round that up to about 25 students per class, over 475,000 students have participated. So pretty amazing. So how does it work? You will register in CapSpace, and we ask when you register that you choose as many times as you can do. It runs for 6 days, and there are times from 8:30 in the morning until 4 or 5 in the afternoon because of the difference in time zones. So as a teacher, you want to register for as many times. You can sign up for Monday at 10 o'clock, Tuesday at 1 o'clock, Wednesday at 11 o'clock, whatever your schedule allows, because the more times you register, the more choices we have to match. When I have people who only sign up for one time, they sometimes end up in what we call our unmatched pile. And it doesn't mean that you won't get a match, but we have to work really hard to find you a match. So the more times you can sign up for, the better for you. Then we will match you with a class. Our first choice is outside of the state, so that you have somebody in a different part of the country. But again, it depends how many people sign up. If we have, a huge number from one state, then sometimes we do have to match within that state, but across the state, hopefully. When you get your match will show up in CapSpace. If you are a coordinator and are registering on behalf of people, your matches will show up in the coordinators page on CapSpace. And then it's time for you to communicate. You'll get an email about your match with your partner's name and email address. And then you should start communicating with that partner. Send an email, introduce yourself. It's a good idea to talk a little bit about what you're going to do in your presentation, what they want to do. Mainly because, if both classes were going to read The Cat in the Hat, you probably would like to have something a little different. So that's the way you want to communicate. It's also a good idea to tell your partner if you have a winter break or something like that, because if they try and get hold of you and you're out for that week or a long weekend, it gets kind of frustrating. So you want to do a test call. We always want to do a test call. Doesn't guarantee that things will happen, but you have a much better chance of knowing that if there's a problem, we can solve it before the time. The general agenda is about 10 minutes of connecting, checking your video, checking your audio, 10 minutes of introductions. It's always a good idea if you can have a map, and it has to be a large map so that students can see where you're located. Again, that adds to the information they gain from the session. And then each class about 15 minutes for a presentation, and then 15 minutes at the end for a Q&A. So kids get to ask each other questions about, they want to know what kind of sports do you play at your school, what books are you reading, etc. Now that can be adjusted according to age. First graders, kindergartners may not want to do a 15-minute presentation. It may be more like 7 or 8 minutes, but you can discuss that with your partner teacher when you start communicating. The other thing that's really helpful is to be flexible. Life happens. There's flu. We have snow days in many parts of the country, and they always happen during Read Around the Planet. And so try and be flexible. If you can't make, if somebody has a snow day and your partner class is not available the day that you had planned, schedule it out. Make it the next week. March is a good time. Anytime is really a good time to celebrate reading. I remember one year we had a teacher who had an emergency appendectomy, and they finally connected in May. But you know what? The kids didn't care. They had just as much fun in May as they had in March. So try and be flexible, but most of all, have fun. Let your kids have fun and make it a fun experience for both classes. Okay, Jan, I will turn it back to you.
Okay. Next slide, Paul. So these are the dates that you need to be aware of. We're going to be ending registration for Read Around the Planet on January 31st. And then we'll be taking a couple of weeks to do the matching. And then on or before February 18th, you will be emailed your partner details. It will also be visible on the CapSpace website. On March the 2nd, we're hoping to do a kickoff event with CILC where we're going to celebrate the WRAP event and hear about some of the projects that are planned. And then beginning that same day through March the 9th, the connections will occur. Go ahead, Paul. So this is a little mini tutorial on how to get registered. So if you are new to CapSpace, you'll need to sign in and get an account so that you can log into CapSpace. Note on the bottom where the asterisk is that when you sign up for the first time on CapSpace, you'll have to identify the school that you're in. And there's a drop-down list. You can search for your school. And if you don't find your school, then you can add it. Is that right, Sue?
That's right. But also, if you do add your school, you will have to add your equipment. So if you're not the tech person or don't know what kind of equipment, you may want to find that out first, because you will not be able to register unless the school has equipment attached.
Okay, and we're going to talk more about the equipment side of things at the end of the webinar today. So let's say you've gone through the process of registering on CapSpace. Then you would log in and look for events in the top menu, click on events, and then look for in the boxes below, Read Around the Planet 2020, click on that. Then you're going to read the information about the program and download the teacher packet. And if you're a coordinator, there's also a coordinator packet with a handy dandy tool for keeping up with who's going to do what when. Then you go in and register your group. Next slide. So important information about registering, and this is a reiteration, you need to pick as many dates and times as you can. Once you're done, you cannot go back and change your registration. You have to do it over. Sorry about that. We can hopefully fix that in probably around March. If you are registering multiple teachers as a coordinator, please give them each a unique name. For example, Johnson 2nd grade or Smith 2E. Oh, wow, there's Monica. Next slide, Paul. Then you're going to get ready. You will be notified on or before February 18th and get that information of the teacher that you've been matched with. You will get their phone number as well. So if you have trouble getting them to answer an email, pick up the phone and call them. You're going to connect with your partner teacher to discuss the content for your connection. And we're going to give you some ideas here in just a minute about what that content might look like. As soon as possible, once you and your teacher have settled on what kind of video connection you're going to do, you're going to do a test call with your partner. If it doesn't work the first time, try again. Then get ready and prepare your kids for the big day. Next slide. So this is where I'm going to turn it over to Miss Audra.
Thank you, Jan. And like she said, I'm a distance learning coordinator in Kansas, and my area is South Central, kind of around the Wichita area. I've got lots of small rural schools. This was actually one of the first projects that my schools participated in when we started doing connections, collaborations. It was easy, it was structured, it was free. So the whole thing just made it a little easier for my teachers to be able to jump into as one of their first projects. Another good thing about it is it's as easy as you want it to be, or it can be as detailed as you want it to be. I've had teachers do just the very basics and have a good time. And then I've had ones that go in and do just crazy big projects. I mean, that's what they wanted to do, you know? So it's a great first time connection, and then it's a great follow-up, you know, for years to come. And I think my teachers have participated most years after that. But some of the examples you see on the screen right now, this is the older one. You've got some older technology there. But it was a class in Kansas that was doing a reader's theater. So they kind of did a background for themselves. They had different props as they read their different parts. They'd hold things up. So they just had different pieces of their presentation that was fun for the other school, and the other school did this similar thing. And the other things that you can do, the student story. So if you worked, you know, just different grade levels, if they worked on short stories or, you know, poetry, a lot of classes will do kind of a poetry type thing, then that's a great time to feature your students' work. And of course, if you have 25 kids in the class, you may not have time to do all 25 out of both classes. So you may just pick or have the kids vote or just draw out of a hat, maybe 5 of them, or whatever's going to fill the time that you're looking to fill. And with the other class as well. So and not every class has to do the same thing. One class could do reader theater and then the other class could do poetry, or, whatever they chose to do. So you don't even have to do the same thing. You can make it collaborative or not. I've had some that sang. They sang some Dr. Seuss books. They had a blast. We've had costumes. We've had lots of things. Paul, will you switch to the next one? And then this class, I thought they did a really neat thing. They read the book S is for Sunflower, A Kansas Alphabet, and that's by Devin Sicilian. That book is basically an overview of Kansas and Kansas items. So the way that the kids, they read it to the other class, and they did a lot of prep work as well. So obviously, as a Kansas school, you learn about the state, and so they were covering all the different things, the state tree, reptile, insect, bird, all those different things that kids will typically learn about their state are covered in this book. So they made a presentation out of it as well. So the kids not only learned themselves about their state things, but then they were able to teach it to the other kids that were in another state. That was a really neat way to not only, because that's curriculum that you already cover, but then it's a way to also teach somebody else about it as well. And then one more, Paul. And then this class, they kind of did, they had kind of a set behind them, but they read the book, I Am Not Going to Get Up Today, and they kind of acted out different parts that were funny. This particular group of students, my little cousin was in that one, they were a lot of class clowns in that class, and they had a really good time with this. So they did a lot of acting, they had fun, the other class was laughing, all the classes were having a good time. And it was a way, that they could learn at the same time. So this one really cracked me up to get to sit back and watch this one happen, because the teachers were having fun, the kids were having fun. But besides the actual project, I know Jan said it and Sue said it, another great thing about these connections is the time to learn from each other about each other. We always set that time aside to just ask questions of the class. And a lot of times the most common things that come up are, especially the younger audiences, how many recesses do you get a day? What's your favorite thing that they make for lunch? Different things like that are always, weather is always a big one. But it's fun for the kids to learn about probably an environment that's very different than theirs. Or I found it funny, one story, I had a second grade class in a very small town in Kansas, and I think K through 12 had 500 kids total in the district. And they were connected to a rural New York school. And one of the questions from the New York school to my kids were, do you ride horses to school? And of course, our kids are like, what? No, we don't, I live in the town, I don't have a horse. And so then they'd in turn ask the kids in rural New York, well, do you ride the subway to school? And they're like, no, we don't even have a subway. We're in a small town. So it was funny when they realized how common, they're like, I take the bus, or my mom drops me off. So they found out, even though they're so far apart, that there's those commonalities that they didn't think about in the beginning. So it's a lot of fun for classes to get to do just the personable part of it as well. And then part of that, I've had teachers that sometimes it's just a one-time connection, and you go, after Read Around the Planet's done, you go about your way. Sometimes I've had them stay in contact throughout the rest of the year, and they may plan other projects like, hey, you want to listen to us do this later on, or would you like to collaborate on this project? So it's a way to find a partner as well that might want to continue later on. And I know many of you may have, if you've participated before, you may have some similar stories, but Sue, I think you've got some stories as well.
Yeah, after 19 years, I do have a few stories. One of my favorites was a a kindergarten class in New York connected to a kindergarten class in Texas. And the Texas students had just finished their presentation, and the New York teacher said, okay, now let's line up. We're going to be next. And are you ready? And one little boy looked up at the screen and he said, okay, but how do we get in there? So that's one of my, I love that. You know how kids feel about who gets in the TV. Another of my favorite stories was another New York class connected to a class in Northwest Montana, a very small town. And they had finished their presentation and were asking each other questions. And the kids in New York said, we are on the 5th floor of our school building. What floor are you on? Well, the kids in Montana kind of just, their eyes got wide and they went, well, there's nothing over 2 stories in our whole town. So these are the kinds of experiences that really, you know, you're not going to get out of a book. You get through, it's what video conferencing can bring to your classroom. And that's the part I really love, is what do the kids learn about somebody else and where they live and what they, you know, and what their experiences are. And I just want to also say, Audra, that your state books, most states have their books. We have M is for Mitten in Michigan. And those are great bases for Read Around the Planet because, as you said, they learn about their own state, but they also pass that information on to the other class. And those are great books to use for Read Around the Planet. So.
Sue, there's a comment or question from Elizabeth asking if many middle school and high school classes participate.
You know, we do not have that many high school classes. We have always a few, and we do our best to match them. But the problem with high school is they are so confined to their schedules. They don't have the flexibility that, you know, like an elementary or even a middle school class has. And that's what makes it really difficult for high school classes. Middle school is a little easier, but again, it depends on how, you know, everybody has their school schedule and it's pretty much set in stone. And it takes some finagling sometimes to, you know, to make it happen. I've seen sometimes a middle school, for example, if they only have a half hour in common, they will connect twice. One school will do the presentation and then they'll connect the next week and do it again with the second school doing the presentation. It doesn't happen all in one session. So again, you have to be creative, you have to be flexible, but we know teachers are already creative and flexible and willing to make it happen.
I would say, Sue, with that one as well, I know I've seen in the past, and it's been a few years, but I've seen like the higher level, like your high school classes read to the lower level. So you got with their kindergartners and your first graders. So that could be a possibility, knowing that you would be basically mentoring or, you know, reading to that lower level and not partnering with the same age.
Yeah. That happens many times with our language classes too, for the same reason. And so I always encourage the Spanish teachers, have your students write, this app is not working anymore. Have your students write a story and teach the younger kids some vocabulary, some Spanish vocabulary. I mean, there are lots of creative ways that you can make that happen. But we do have that again with some of our language classes, just because if there are not enough people registering, we don't have anybody to match them with. And we go out and we scout all of our, you maybe have been called, do you have any classes you can help us with? So we try our best, but sometimes we just can't make it happen.
Back to you, Jan.
I was just going to show you my Making It Happen award. Oh, you can't see it. We're going to make it happen this year. So Paul, switch over to the next slide for me. Okay, so let's talk about the technology. In the past, Read Around the Planet could only be conducted with H.323 hardware. These were the codecs like Polycoms and Tandberg and Cisco and Lifesize. And those are all still good as long as they're not too old. Yesterday I heard what too old is anything that is HDX or newer is good for Polycom. Polycom VSX doesn't work so great when connecting to other stuff. We ask that you not use Skype, FaceTime, or Hangouts because of the lack of stability, the lack of security. The main thing that you need as a teacher participant is a webcam with a microphone and internet, which most schools have that now. So we are encouraging cloud-based video conferencing such as Zoom or Cisco WebEx. Next slide, Paul. So new for 2020, CILC has a bunch of extra Zoom accounts. So we can help you if neither one of the partner teachers in the match has any kind of video technology, then we can loan you ours and we'll set you up for a test call and for the time or times of your actual Read Around the Planet event. So that's going to be first come, first serve. We only have 2 cloud connectors. So yeah, let's say you're a school and 2 schools and one of you has a say a Polycom codec and the other school has nothing. What we can do is set you up with a Zoom connection that has a cloud connector so you can both meet in the cloud. So that's new this year. Next slide. Hello, Paul. There we go. So this is just a little reiteration of things we've already said. When you go to register your program for your Read Around the Planet program, there are some resources on the Read Around the Planet page. So download your teacher or coordinator packet. Test, test, test. Make sure things are going to work. Also, if you test in one place and plan to have your event in another place, that's a no-no. You need to test in the area that you're going to be using for the actual event. You need to prepare your kids, practice the timing on things. You know, if you've got 15 minutes, make sure your kids can get done in 15 minutes. Communication with that partner teacher is very, very, very important. If you cannot get a hold of your partner teacher via email or phone call, you need to let us know. We might have to find you somebody else. So that's pretty much it. Paul, next slide. I think it's Q&A time. Oh, no. So if you need help during all this process at any point, you can contact me or Tammy or Sue. Oh, Sue, I forgot to get your phone number. But email's usually the best way to get a hold of us. We answer fairly quickly. So that's all of our content slides for today. This is a time for you to ask questions. Paul, can you take the slides down so we can see people? There we go. So teachers, Julia, Chris, Mary, any questions? If you want to just type them into that chat box, we'll answer them for you. And you can direct your question at a particular presenter or at the whole group. I hear somebody typing. Kristen, what did we forget in this presentation? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Jan, we have a couple questions in the chat. If you want to pull that open there, it looks like we got.
Okay, we got the one from Julia. Is it possible to get a school in another country? We can't promise you that, but it's possible. In fact, I've been working with some teachers in Australia this last week that hopefully are going to be participating in Read Around the Planet. And I know Alaska is not a foreign country, but they're going to be participating too, and that would be a fun match for you. I work with schools in Asia, and we'd love to connect with schools in other countries. Great, Jacqueline. Well, just get the word out to your buddies in those other countries. You could download the flyer about Read Around the Planet and send that to your partner schools so they can disseminate it to all the teachers. We'd love to get some matches in Asia. They'd be perfect partners for the kiddos in Melbourne, Australia.
And I'll
Okay.
jump in, Jan. I know
Yeah.
this is, when you're looking at other countries, a lot of times you're looking at a lot of time zones or big differences in time zones depending on where they're at and you're at. So if you throw out as many times as you can that you're available, your chances are higher. The later in the day and the earlier in the day, a lot of times, because I know like we connect with Australia quite often, the later and the earlier you can do a time, the more chance you're going to have to be able to connect with one of those.
That's why I was so excited to hear from Alaska, because they line up pretty good with Australia, whereas the lower 48 does not line up with Australia unless you want to stay late.
And we've done a connection before. One of my schools, they made it like a big affair. They invited parents. They had like snacks brought, parents brought in snacks, and they came in and parents sat at the back, off camera. And then the kids sat up by the camera and they did their exchange. This one wasn't a Read Around the Planet, but it was a collaboration. So it's the same thing. They had planned what they were going to do, and the parents got to watch. So it was early in the morning for them, and it was in the evening for us, and everybody had a really good time. And it also helped. A lot of times the parents don't exactly know what's going on in the classroom. So when the kids come home, a first grader comes home and tells mom something, it may be, you may have to interpret, differently. So it's good for the parents to get to see exactly what's going on. When their kid comes home and says, I talked to a kid in Asia, then they'll know, oh, you really did.
Jacqueline, I like your upside down child. Something for Jackie in California. Before you got on, Jason asked, is there a role for content providers in Read Around the Planet? And I just found out that when we end up with a handful of non-matchable teachers, we reach out to content providers to be their partner. So I hope you'll consider volunteering for that job, Jackie.
I'd be happy to. We have our Pierre the Penguin story time that we could do for the younger grades. So go ahead and reach out.
Okay.
I could jump on that, what Audra was saying before about the parents, having the parents involved. I've seen collaborations done, not specifically Read Around the Planet, but collaborations done during parent-teacher conference nights. And so that's perfect for those schools where the time zone's an issue. But also, in my experience with global collaborations, is that there are a lot of international schools that have residential programs, or they have untraditional hours, and so they might have a class that starts at 7 and ends at 9 p.m. So it's not impossible to connect with an international school just because the time zones are wrong, or off. I shouldn't say wrong, but off. Also, what I've seen a lot when classrooms make connections initially over something like this, and this sometimes, having Read Around the Planet, having an event kind of already set up is less intimidating than having a teacher just kind of be like, hey, let me try to initiate something myself. So having an event is a good motivator for some teachers who maybe haven't done it before or wouldn't necessarily want to plan something themselves. This is kind of like a nice transitional, you are planning something to share, but it's around an event that you didn't have to coordinate. Once they do that, it's kind of like they get over this hurdle, and then they feel a little bit more, they're more empathetic and able to understand what this is all about and make more connections too. So a lot of times it kind of lights a fire under them and gets people really interested in making other global collaborations and connections. And also lots of times when they connect over something like this, like Read Around the Planet, they'll establish that relationship and then stay in touch throughout the year. And they made a friend across the country, across the state, across the world, and they just connect randomly over whatever they feel like connecting over. So it's awesome. It's a great way, if people aren't already doing these kinds of things, it's a great way to really kind of, get that interest going.
We do, Kristen, we do have a couple teachers who have been partners for like 3 or 4 years, and they don't even register anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, we do the same thing in my region too. When teachers make a relationship, they're like, oh, I definitely want to connect with this teacher over this particular collaboration again, whether it's throughout the year over different things or just, hey, this is my rap buddy, and this is a person I want to connect over. They don't even have to register. It's nice for them to register to get data and to to get numbers and things, but it's nice that they feel comfortable enough to make this relationship, and then they just kind of take off with it.
Okay, any more questions? This is your chance.
Just in case not everyone's able to see the chat, I just want to throw out that Jason brought up that his programs have English and Spanish options as well. So that is some good to know for the whole group there.
Yep, so we offer matching for English classes, Spanish classes, and ESL classes, and try to match them with similar groups. So I hope I'll see you guys in the registration rolls as they come in. We've got about 50 classes signed up so far, so we're off to a good start. Remember, the deadline is January 31st. Paul, you want to wind us up here?
You bet. So thanks everybody for participating in today's session, and for those of you who are watching this on the recording, we hope that you'll also be able to join us. I think one of the really exciting things about the CapSpace program is seeing the massive amount of teachers that do sign up for this event. It's really a global activity that is very exciting, and is just, like I said earlier, one of my favorite ones of the year. So hopefully we'll see you all online in the future. With that, I'll go ahead and turn off our recording.